Hey everyone, I'm Retro Rampage and welcome to my channel. I apologize for the lack of uploads the past few weeks. I was dealing with some medical issues that were making it very difficult to play and record, and by the time this video goes up, I'll be recovering from surgery. A gap in videos like that shouldn't happen again, and I want to make one video a week my goal from here on out. So if you're new here, in this series I like to make or showcase builds with the new Armor 2.0 system that we got with Shadowkeep. I don't guarantee that every build I show off will be the new meta or the best loadout by any means, but what I do guarantee is that these loadouts change the way you play Destiny and that they'll be fun. I do take suggestions for builds, but so far all of the builds I've showcased are ones that I thought of and tested myself. Although, Destiny is a huge game and I often end up finding out later that the build was already covered by someone else. Destiny has a huge fan base, and there are many content creators out there. Someone's bound to cover some of this stuff before me, and that's okay. I'm not trying to ride on any coattails here or step on anyone's toes, I'm just trying to have some fun talking about my favorite game. One thing that all of my previous builds had in common was using the Season of the Undying's artifact mods in order to elevate my builds and make them stronger than they were before. Things such as Thundercoil, Oppressive Darkness, or anti-barrier rounds with Breach Refractor and Ballistic Combo are extremely powerful tools that we have at our disposal now. But these are all seasonal. Each of these will be replaced with other mods once the next season comes out, and for some of you time travelers out there, they may already be different. So I thought it would be fun to try and challenge myself to make a build that completely ignores all of these mods. Yes, obviously, this build can benefit from them, but every build can. You don't need me to tell you that. So for the purposes of this video, I'll be pretending as if the seasonal artifact does not exist, making sure that this build is future-proof. This build will have the same effectiveness 6 months from now as it did when I first wrote it, provided that the exotic won't be nerfed, which I doubt will happen. Anyway, with all of that out of the way, let's get on with the build. So the exotic we'll be using is the Crown of Tempests. This is an exotic from the base game, and it's very similar to the last exotic I covered, Nezarec Sin. For those of you who haven't used it before, this exotic has a perk called Conduction Tines that activates on an arc ability kill. While it's active, it speeds up the recharge rate of all of your abilities for 5 seconds and stacks up to 3 times. Every kill you get with an arc ability after 3 will just keep refreshing the timer, giving faster ability regen for longer. Conduction Tines also increases the duration of Storm Trance. So the subclass we'll be pairing this exotic with is Top Tree Stormcaller Attunement of Conduction. This subclass is a lot of fun to play with, and I don't actually see many people using it in PvE, which is a shame. Basically, this subclass is centered around your grenades and chaining damage between enemies with them. The grenade can bounce around between enemies for a pretty long time as long as there are enemies nearby, and the melee ability does the same thing. Every tick of damage you do with those chains from either your grenade or melee actually feeds into your grenade energy. So when you're at Conduction Times 3, you're very often able to keep throwing grenades right before it resets. And if you're able to keep the chain up long enough, you can get your super in under a minute. The energy you get back from Conduction Tines is just like Nezarec Sin. It's a flat percentage given back to you, so it almost completely ignores your stats, meaning you can spec into mobility, resilience, or recovery more because you know you'll have your abilities back really fast as long as you're killing with them. Now, onto mods. For your helmet, you won't need to worry about much. Just add on anything that complements the guns you're using or the stat you want to buff. For your gauntlets, you don't necessarily need them, but if you have the mod, Enhanced Momentum Transfer gives you melee energy every time you damage with a grenade, which, in turn, you can use to get your grenades back faster. For your chest piece and boots, you don't really need anything in particular, just add on mods that complement your guns or buff the stats you want. For your class item, I'd recommend using 2 distribution mods stacked together. This will allow you to get a pretty big chunk of energy back for all of your abilities every time you use your class ability near enemies, which can help a lot in keeping Conduction Times up. For your weapons, you can for the most part use whatever you want, but I'd recommend having at least one weapon with Demolitionist. That way, if your Conduction Times chain gets broken, you have a way to get it going again faster. If you want some ideas for what weapon to try and get Demolitionist on, search the Demolitionist perk on light.gg. And you can see every weapon it rolls on. If you want a weapon with a guaranteed roll with Demolitionist, the heavy machine gun Edgewise has it, and it's not too hard to get. My personal favorite loadout for this build has been my Trust with Firefly and Rampage, my Edgewise machine gun, and whatever secondary weapon I want to use during that encounter. Usually Izanagi's Burden for DPS or Mountaintop for more general use. I also tested 1-2 Punch with the chain melee, but unfortunately it does not stack. If you want to lean really heavy into the whole ad clearing playstyle, Thunderlord could also be a good option. This build isn't game-breaking or OP by any means, but it is still very powerful, and it's viable in basically every activity outside of PvP. I ran the Garden of Salvation with it, Solo to Nightfall, and I've played a lot of Gambit with it. If you like to play as a Collector or a Reaper, this could be one of the better options for loadouts. Just make sure you're playing in a coordinated team and they know not to steal your kills, because the effectiveness of this build is ruined if there are less enemies for you to kill with your abilities. Thanks a ton for watching. If you have any ideas for builds, leave them in the comments below. If I like it and decide to cover it, I'll give you a shout out in the video, and if you're also a YouTuber, I'll link to your channel in the iCard at the top right, and it'll be at the top of the description. If you're interested, I also did finally set up a Twitter page so I can interact with you guys more. If you want to follow me, it's at RetroRampage37. A link to that will be in the description. And hey, if you want to support a new Destiny content creator, please consider subscribing and sharing this video with other Destiny players who could get use from it. That's all I got for you today. You all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time.